week 8. We're almost halfway there. Next week, we're going to be preparing for an exam, preparing for an exam for week 9. This will cover most of all the CSS that we've done in the past couple of weeks. It'll be consisting of a quiz of 40 some questions, perhaps 50 questions. So um, expect to go over any and all of the CSS material we've covered in the past weeks, and especially over the course of the quizzes that we've been covering. Okay, so week 14, we're gonna go ahead and continue with CSS. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and just give you an overview. There will not be a lab of programming this week. A simple fact that CSS transformations, transitions, and canvas have been kind of phased out in HTML5. So doing these elements, creating these elements, and doing using attributes for these elements will be very difficult in the sense that they would likely not be appearing in HTML5 or on Google for that matter. So these kind of have been phased out. So it'll even if we do work on them, you'll be having a very hard time viewing those elements in on the front end. Um, and so you know what, we're gonna go ahead and skip on this on the lab side. We will, however, be having a revisit to our project. And so we're right now in this lecture video, we're going to go over lesson 14 and lesson 15 so you guys can get a clear picture of what those elements consist of, and just for the terminology aspect, and of course fulfilling the requirements of the COSA 1315. So we're going to go ahead and go right to it. We're going to follow the book for just a bit. um, some of these terms you've are even familiar. And some of these terms are also a little bit tricky in the sense that you will see them in used different ways. Um, and we'll go over it just briefly. But I do expect for you guys to read on your own. If you have any further questions, I would also have you guys refer to W3 Schools to just further explain um, what these elements do. But like I said, we won't be doing a lab assignment over this. Just simple fact that these elements are no longer being supported. So let's go ahead and get right to it. So we're going to continue. Transformations, very simple, very easy. Of course, these are self-explanatory. When you create a rotate attribute to an element, of course, it'll spin in place. Scaling shrinks or enlarges an element, and we'll go over some of the code because some of these may work and still, and when you do hover and when you do on click. Another thing that we're also faced with when we're reading this chapter is a lot of these elements also um, depend on JavaScript. So we're not going to get into JavaScript until week 10. And once we get into week 10, we're going to have to ramp up our level of comprehension as far as JavaScript, because it is a little bit more um, uh, intense, intense in the programming side, intense in the how we were talking about classifications and IDs and our naming conventions and stuff like that. They'll be a little bit more complex and a little bit more harder to follow if they're just barely being exposed to coding at all. So we're gonna go ahead and just review some of just a little bit of JavaScript. Like I said, we won't be getting into it, and hopefully the week 10, I will have you guys read up on JavaScript just to get your feet wet on week 9. But nevertheless, week 10, we start all new with JavaScript. All right, like mentioned before, um, some of these elements are attributes to the elements. Like say you want to rotate a picture on hover. It's very doable and like a scale. Translating is moving from one position to another position on the screen. For instance, you have a particular div with a picture inside, and you want it to, move to a different place within it, like from left to right to center, on click or on hover, or uh, on those kinds of listeners. We call them listeners. So, like I said, some of these require some type of JavaScript in on top of our CSS attributes or to the elements. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and follow along the book here. Um, you can start seeing some of this where you add a semicolon to some of these elements. For instance, we have a classification of number 2 to an element, and we're going to want to transform that by rotating it 10 degrees, which is will just go like this. So you want to hover, when you hover an item and you want it to do something, by hovering it, it'll be hover. We'll get to that. We'll see that in just a bit. But I'm trying to get getting ahead of myself here. Transforming for the same factor. Transforming, we don't have a particular listener to it yet, so we don't know exactly when and how it's going to happen. But the fact that using this tag right here allows you to create a transition from one from one state to another. It's called transform. All right, so this gets a little bit more obvious as to how we are going to manipulate, in this particular case, a button by making a button bigger. Of course, we have to classify this. Remember, folks, we're using CSS style sheets. So all this within the style tag will be in the CSS page rather than the inside your text code. So we're classifying this particular button. Remember, you can have multiple buttons. You're gonna have, button 1, button 2, button 3. Make sure you start classifying those buttons and then identifying them, so you can create separate styles for each of the buttons, or you want this particular function to work on all the buttons. So you label all your buttons 1. So okay. So here we are formatting and setting up our type and all our different attributes such as padding and margins. But here we're adding a feature that once we hover over the button, we want it to transform from its normal size to 1.2 size times bigger. So when you go over a particular item, such as this button, it'll slightly enlarge. So we are this can also be set as in pictures. Like let's say you have a picture and it's a 300 by 300 pixels, and you want to have the transform to be slightly bigger than normal. Then this would be possible by using the transform along with a hover function to create that. All right, let's continue. Translate is also a type of state change. So we can change from, like I said, from one place to another. You can set it by pixels as well. So you want to move it to one, certain pixels from where it normally is at. So we can, um, uh, this is width-wise and then height-wise. So it's going to also be a negative and a negative 20 if you want it to move uh, laterally to the other way. So there you go. Transforming. This moves left and this moves up. I'm sorry, moves right and then moves up. Mm-hmm. The skewing think we do have a sample of skewing. Okay, yeah, there you go. Skewing takes a normal div and changes it by a certain degree, and then you specify the degree. Okay. And you can have also separate divs or separate elements, and then apply that to um, over the course of several elements, and then you make a visual. Rotating. Okay, now we're working with the rotating transitions. Um, there's some factors that we got or parameters that we got to include, such as the duration, such as a property, which is the name of the type of transition you're trying to indicate. For instance, this will be transition. We'll call this transition rotate. Transition rotate, and then of course we'll give it the duration. You want it to move to 10 degrees. I'm sorry, this is time. Time is, you specify 0.5, S means seconds, so 0.5 milliseconds, etc. We're going to go over that real quick. Okay, here we go. This is our rotating. So we're translating, and we're using several transform functions over the other. We're trying to make this move, and then we're going to make it rotate. So we're translating, we're moving from one place to another slightly, and then we're using the rotate to tilt it 45 degrees. Okay. So we're going from rotating to actually spinning. So once we have a listener here, once it's clicked, this clicked icon, I just had it right now. There you go. Oh, sorry. All right, this clicked is a listener that once it's clicked, it'll transform and move 230 degrees. It makes it go the full and pass. Okay. So that was a short chapter. You are, however, expected to read and get some of the terminology. There will be a 10-question quiz over chapter 14 and chapter 15. Like I mentioned before, there will not be a lab regarding chapter 14 and chapter 15. But however, we will continue on our project. We will revisit the project. Okay, animating with CSS and Canvas. Like I said, Canvas, I know for a fact a lot of those features are not in HTML5. Mm-hmm. So keyframe is slightly different. Keyframing, it's a use of several transforming, and keyframing marks a change state. So change when the start from a particular state and you wanted to finish at another particular state. There's a lot of like like a moving picture, like those old-fashioned movie pictures that they change the slides ever so fast, like so this is what keyframing means, that it's going to change from one state to another, and that it's going to do a gradual change in between, and it's denoted by a particular time, like a time set here, about 0.5 seconds, and they're changing here. Oh, they're putting the background. Okay. So here we're doing simple animations. You are more than welcome to practice the homeworks on this chapter. Like I said, don't be surprised if they will not be fully operational on the front end, like on Google. But I have tried some out on uh, the private incognito windows. So you're more than welcome to use the incognito windows to make these uh, these homeworks. Basically, keyframing is it's just a form of animation. Um, Typically, the newer forms of animation are done through JavaScript, and we'll get to that bridge when uh, in the upcoming weeks. There's not much that I can base our um, assignment on, period, or that I see that we'll be using this upcoming uh, assignments. We will, however, be doing a drawing shapes once we do get into JavaScript, simply because it requires a script or scripting. This is JavaScript right here, defined by a script tag. Um, the guys are not fully exposed to that just yet. So, like I said, this is your uh, where y'all be getting your feet wet and into what JavaScript does for your elements and kind of replaces Canvas in a sense, or enhances the coding in Canvas for that effect. So I do encourage you guys to review some of these terminology here will be used on the quiz. Go back just a second, make sure I'm not missing anything out on. Okay, chapter 15. Okay. Yes, please note the difference between transitions and animations. So we talked about that with keyframing, where we saw the introduction to animations using keyframing. Okay, we use the key canvas element. We talked a little about that. Please do read on more on canvas element, and there is a bit more reading materials on W3 schools. And here it mentions how you can create a canvas and then from there you can start manipulating, but typically uses a lot of JavaScript. So here says element is supported from the 2014 version. Okay. There you go. But it's not going to have any use for us without the use of JavaScript. So we'll revisit the canvas element once we start getting into our JavaScript. Okay. So we covered the aspects of animation control. Okay, we talked about iterations, directions, left and right, up and down. We're using the positive and negative. The timings, we use the 5 REM or the 5S, which is seconds, or 0.5 as milliseconds. Okay, the key takeaway on this will be just highlighting the importance of mastering the transformations, transitions, and animations in web development. We will possibly be revisiting just the canvas element by using JavaScript. So be on the lookout that we'll be using this canvas feature, this canvas element in conjunction with JavaScript further down the line. Okay, so that was our designated readings for the week, chapters 14, chapter 15. Okay, there is a quiz in the back. You might use that as reference. There is basically mostly comprehension on our upcoming quiz based on 10 questions. So yeah, so that was it. So be on the lookout for the next video. Next video will be our so-called lab assignment. Won't be so much touching these subjects, but okay, won't be touching these subjects, but I will still have an assignment, and I'm going to go ahead and go over it in the upcoming video.